Hey guys, welcome back. Today I've got some potential news for Halo Infinite's campaign that actually fulfills a pipe dream of mine. People found a LinkedIn post by an X343 campaign level designer that states that he helped to build gameplay moments such as combat encounters, narrative events, and logic puzzles, which implies that Infinite's campaign will include puzzles of some sort. Now, I double checked and this LinkedIn post is absolutely legit, it totally exists, so today I want to talk about what this could mean for Infinite's campaign and why it makes me so excited. Real quick though, before we start, I just want to give a quick shout out to my new channel, Flooded with Flavor. Yep, your boy has officially started a cooking channel that focuses primarily on smoking and barbecue, and the first video went live the other day, a 19-hour brisket smoke. Thank you so much to everyone who already subbed and checked the video out. The launch of the channel has absolutely blown me away. I've got some great stuff in the pipeline as well, including, I kid you not, a real-life recreation of a Moa burger, so make sure you hit that link in the description and also the pinned comment to go and subscribe and also turn on all notifications. Right then, so before we talk about what the inclusion of logic puzzles could mean for Halo Infinite, let's first take a look at what logic puzzles actually are. So, logic puzzles are puzzles derived primarily from deduction, which is a pretty broad description. A great example of a logic puzzle is Sudoku, where you have to use existing information to deduce which number goes in each box to complete a row or a column, but of course, that doesn't mean that Halo Infinite will feature Sudoku.
Fight hard! I will!
There are, literally pun intended, an infinite number of puzzles and puzzle-like scenarios that center around deduction, so this doesn't really give us any clues as to how they may be implemented in the game. Now, before we go any further, I do just want to remind you guys to take this LinkedIn post with a grain of salt, as it could all amount to nothing. I mean, technically, almost any gameplay scenario or encounter could theoretically be classed as a logic puzzle, as deduction could be used to overcome them, so this doesn't 100% confirm Resident Evil style puzzles in Infinite. However, the fact that they were name dropped separate to gameplay moments does make me think that this is referring to something a bit more than just a simple encounter. So, why does the possibility of puzzles in Halo Infinite make me so excited? Well, personally, I think puzzles add a really unique layer of depth and difficulty to almost any game they're included in a way that little else can. Back in the early 2000s, when platforming and adventure games were all the rage, puzzles were really common in gaming, and they bled through into other genres as well, but as the years went by and gaming kind of homogenized more, their inclusion became rarer and rarer, which, for someone like me who always enjoyed them and the challenge they posed, kinda sucked. Now, thankfully, in recent years, we've actually seen something of a renaissance of puzzles in gaming. Resident Evil 7, which acted as a soft reboot for the franchise after a few rough games, sound familiar? Had a significantly renewed interest in the kind of classic Resident Evil styled puzzles when exploring the Baker Mansion and also the surrounding area. Doom Eternal introduced jumping puzzles that added a way to change up the typically ultra-fast pacing of Doom, and also introduce a degree of platforming, which I think worked really well. Breath of the Wild included a number of puzzles in its open world as well, which, to be fair, is nothing new for a Zelda game. Jedi Fallen Order also included a number of really interesting and genuinely brain-scratching puzzles that had you use the Force in a totally different way to how it would typically be used in combat, and really played to the strengths of the game's excellent movement and level design. The raids in Destiny feature puzzles in between encounters that require a totally different skill set to combat to overcome, and again, much like Doom, help to break up the pacing of the game and give the players breaks in between highly intense scenarios. And then, even to kind of a lesser extent, we have Easter eggs in zombies maps that put their own twist on puzzles in certain steps, that also have that kind of unique approach of being included in a wave-based survival mode over a linear campaign or an open world game. And so, with all that in mind, it really wouldn't surprise me to see Halo Infinite take a stab at puzzles as well, especially given the emphasis that 343 have put on exploration for the campaign. Now, the thing that I love the most about puzzles is the unique form of challenge they pose, especially in an action-heavy game like Halo. Difficulty in games nowadays is typically equated to either how tough an enemy is, how much damage the enemies do, or how hard certain levels are to beat, and one's ability to overcome these challenges is normally dependent on just the same thing: how good you are with the core mechanics of the game, so how good you are at shooting, at moving, at driving, etc. However, puzzles and solving them requires a very different skill set to just taking out hordes of enemies: critical thinking. Not only does this provide a completely unique challenge to the player, but it also appeals to different kinds of players as well. For example, a mechanically sound player who has great aim and has mastered strafing and jumping might struggle to solve some puzzles, and vice versa as well. Somebody who doesn't have a particularly good shot might be really good at solving puzzles. This adds a great level of depth and variety to the challenges that you face in-game, and also helps to mix up the difficulty throughout. And personally, I think the best example of this is Resident Evil. The way that Resident Evil weaves puzzles into survival horror adds another layer to what is already a challenging experience, while also playing to Resident Evil's strengths in many ways. Some of the puzzles offer a brief respite from the fear and the tension that comes from exploring the creepy world that you're in, whereas others force you to go back into that world and explore areas of it that maybe you'd been hesitant to in the past for fear of horror or tough enemies. They make you interact with the environment in ways that you wouldn't normally think to, and above all else, many of the puzzles really just make you think. They get that logic part of your brain going in ways that shooting zombies or mixing herbs don't, which I think really adds to the whole survival horror experience. Now personally, I think the way that puzzles are integrated into Resident Evil would work a treat for Infinite as well. With Halo 5, 343 experimented with the weapons down levels, where there was no combat or fighting or anything, but rather a focus on investigation and looking for clues. Now, I think the idea here was kinda cool, but the execution really wasn't great in my opinion. They broke up the pacing of the levels in a really janky and disconnected way, and never did they feel connected to the combat in the previous and also the following levels. They just felt like a really sudden, sharp change of pacing. Well, puzzles could be the next evolution of these weapons down sections if they were done in the Resident Evil style. They'd still offer the same change of pacing, allowing the player to just kinda chill for a little bit and to ensure they don't suffer from any combat fatigue. But at the same time, they could bleed into the combat and the exploration when you solve them. I think of how Resident Evil has you explore the map to find keys or gems or unique items to then return to the puzzle, whether the puzzle is a door or a statue or something else entirely, and solve it. That could be a great way to make these more chill sections still feel like a part of the overarching experience, not just something that kind of abruptly slows down the pacing. They could also play to the strengths of Halo's gameplay really well as well, particularly its focus on sandbox and environmental elements. Things like the grapple shot could interact with the level design and the environment to almost create platforming puzzles, akin to ones that you'd find in Fallen Order or, hell, Doom Eternal as well. Throw in a few elements of the action-adventure genre and blend them with Halo's unique take on first-person shooter to not only create a cool new layer of depth in how you progress through the campaign, but also to add a ton of depth to the level design as well. I feel like something like this would work really well with the kind of expansiveness and the scale of the Forerunner structures we've seen so far in Infinite. Blending things like the grapple shot with these environments could make for some really cool platforming that could in turn play into the puzzles. Elements of the actual environment as well could integrate into the puzzles as puzzle pieces, for example, kind of like how they do in Resident Evil. Forerunner glyphs, ancient human symbols, Forerunner mechanisms, etc, things that are all kind of integrated into the environment and that at a first glance just seem like mundane pieces of set dressing could all play parts in certain puzzles, which could end up bringing back that feeling of investigation that ODST invoked. Doing this would flesh out the world and provide a totally unique Halo experience. It'd be a great way to really go above and beyond with Halo's first semi-open world game in a way that exceeds just approaching encounters in different ways, as cool as that is. And then you throw in the ways that these puzzles could be modified based on difficulty, and I mean, the mind just goes wild. I'm trying not to get my hopes up too much about this ultimately because, I mean, the only information we have about this so far is a sentence in a LinkedIn bio, but I really do hope this little bite of information does end up meaning that we're getting puzzles of some sort, because not only do I love the idea, but I also think that there's something that would really fit well in a semi-open world Halo game like Halo Infinite. So, is this something that you like the sound of? Would you like to see puzzles make their way into Halo, or is this something that you're not particularly fond of? Let me hear it down below in the comments, and with that said, I'm gonna round this one out here. I want to give a huge thank you to Halo Wars 2 and Volcanic for becoming new Primordials, to DC Wage and N6 Grim Jow for becoming new Iconic Ones, and to SifiKILLS for pledging higher than Iconic Ones over on Patreon. My dudes, thank you very, very much. I really do appreciate the support. And Sifi, my man, a $75 tier doesn't even exist. You are insane. Thank you so much, my bro. I really do genuinely appreciate it. Along with, of course, everyone else over there who continues to support me. You guys are legends. And thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget about Flooded with Flavor. And I'll catch you all in the next one.